Okay, so this is huge story today. Meta and Mark Zuckerberg. Obviously, Meta is the parent company which owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. Mark Zuckerberg being the founder of Facebook and now the owner of Meta, founder of Meta 2, owner of Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook. He has released a statement, okay, and this is huge. So this is addressed to Chairman Jordan, the Committee on the Judiciary, United States House of Representatives, right? So this is basically a letter, a statement to Washington D.C. and obviously to the whole of the world. Okay, so this was on the 26th of August 2024. I'm recording this on the 27th of August 2024, and I'll tell you, everything you need to know about this. Really, there's 5 main things you need to take away from this statement. Maybe a couple more, I'll go into them. But first, let me read you this statement, okay? So, to Chairman Jordan, I appreciate the committee's interest in content moderation on online platforms. As you are aware, Meta has produced thousands of documents as part of your investigation and made a dozen employees available for transcribed interviews. Further to our cooperation with your investigation, I welcome the opportunity to share what I've taken away from this process. There's a lot to talk about right now about how the US government interacts with companies like Meta, and I want to be clear about our position. Our platforms are for everybody. We are about promoting speech and helping people connect in a safe and secure way. As part of this, we regularly hear from governments around the world and others with various concerns around public discourse and public safety. In 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take content down, and we own our decisions, including COVID-19 related changes we made to our enforcement in the wake of this pressure. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. I also think that we made some choices that, with the benefits of hindsight and new information, we wouldn't make today. Like I said to our teams at the time, I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction. And we're ready to push back if something like this happens again. In a separate situation, the FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on corruption allegations involving then Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it while we were waiting for a reply. It's since been made clear that the reporting was not Russian disinformation, and in retrospect, we shouldn't have demoted the story. We've changed our policies and processes to making sure this doesn't happen again. For instance, we no longer temporarily demote things in the United States while waiting for fact checkers. Apart from content moderation, I want to address the contributions I made during the last presidential cycle to support electoral infrastructure. The idea here was to make sure local election jurisdictions across the country had the resources they needed to help people vote safely during a global pandemic. I made sure these contributions were through the Chan Zuckerberg initiative. They were designed to be non-partisan, spread across urban, rural, and suburban communities. Still, despite the analysis I've seen showing otherwise, I know that some people believe this work benefited one party over another. My goal is to be neutral in this and not play one role one way or another, or even to appear to be playing a role. So I don't plan on making similar contributions this cycle. Respectfully, Mark Zuckerberg. Now, look, this is obviously a bit of a big statement. Hope my reading wasn't too bad. The truth is, listen, I'm not bad at speaking. When it comes to reading, I'm not the best, but I'm probably better than you. So, still the king. Anyway, 5 things that you really need to take away from that, okay? So, the first thing you need to understand is that this needs to be respected, okay? Because he is admitting, right, that he and his companies complied blindly without knowing the absolute facts. They complied in censoring and labeling certain content as disinformation, okay, which they could not verify at the time, which for most companies would die on the hill that they were correct, and that, you know, once they say something, that most companies don't pedal back, they don't backtrack, they don't own up to their mistakes. Okay, now look, this is a big thing that they did. This is essentially admitting that everyone was correct, right, when it comes to, you know, the FBI censoring the Hunter Biden situation, Hunter Biden's laptop, you know, everything going on in Ukraine, etc. During the election, right? Which means, by extension, you could say that this actually 100% validates all the Americans and all of the MAGA crowd and, you know, the Trump supporters that said that the election was stolen and there was election interference, you know, by the Biden administration. This is essentially true because Zuckerberg is saying right here, right now, that he was pressured and his people, his team, his companies were put under extreme pressure by the Biden administration to, you know, censor stories, to, you know, say that something's Russian disinformation without fact checking or without providing evidence. And that's, on the Zuckerberg side, that's brave. Okay, because you know for a fact that you're going to get a lot of stick. Now, yeah, I'm sure he's going to get a bit of respect for this, but you're also going to get stick, and certain people aren't going to forgive that, and they don't have to forgive that, because that is bad, right? So what we also know is that the general censorship, not even to do with COVID, which obviously I said from the beginning it was all, you know, censorship by the government, forcing these companies to do it. Although I don't know if I would say that I knew it was forcing, but I knew that they were playing hand in hand. But this proves that all of the COVID stuff people were saying is true, right? And it also proves that the censorship on, like he said, and this, I quote, humor, right? So all the jokes made around, you know, certain events, certain people, certain administrations, certain pandemics, right? They censored that. They admitted it. So again, it just proves a lot of tin hat conspiracy theorists, as certain people in the news and the mainstream media would call us, and I say us because I'm one of those, that's what they called me. They are admitting that they were censoring these things due to pressure from the government, and also they didn't even have any evidence whatsoever, and that in the process of fact checking, which they now can conclude that the checks are done, it wasn't a fact, that they treated it as if it was a fact and didn't allow for the, you know, public discourse on his platforms. Which, look, to admit that is okay. I personally, I don't know if I'd say I forgive that, but I respect it 100%. Now, this also tells us, second thing this tells us is that he understands that people have had enough, okay? Because you have to remember that before he makes a statement like this, he's probably been thinking about it for a while. He had obviously spoke to a few people. Look, I'm sure he's his own man, right? But he's spoke to, you know, maybe his wife, his friends, his team, business associates, whatever. and planned and to maybe release a statement outweighed the pros and the cons, and ultimately decided that it was probably a good thing to make a statement like this, because he sees the tides shifting in general and see that people have had enough, and people are sick of all the censorship and the big tech companies having a hold on and having a big say on what we can and cannot say, regardless of whether if it's legal. They still censor stuff. So your speech on platforms is more limited than it is in face-to-face conversations, which people don't like. People have had enough of that. This also tells us that he doesn't stand with the Biden administration anymore, and definitely doesn't stand with the potential Kamala Harris administration. Okay, this is because he has completely thrown them under the bus. He's outed them publicly. Remember, this isn't like, look, technically every time anyone can go public. But remember, there's a difference between, maybe me right now with the amount of people that watch anything I post on the internet compared to anything he does, right? He knows that when he puts a statement out like this, he knows for a fact 100 million people are going to see this, minimum. For everyone, the whole internet's going to see it, right? So he is publicly throwing them under the bus, publicly, wiping his hands of them, which again is respectful and is probably going to earn him a lot of, I wouldn't say love, but it would earn him a lot of respect from a lot of people on the right, especially in the United States. Third thing, or fourth thing, should I say, is that this shows 100% that he actually does love his country. Now, obviously, we saw the interview that he did with, I don't even know who it was, some reporter, when he addressed the Trump shooting and, said that, and I quote, that Trump getting up and pumping his fist in the air moments after getting shot was one of the most badass things he'd ever seen in his life, right? And, the fact that he is claiming, now look, we'll have to see if he's actually going to, go free speech the same way that Elon has. And we'll get to Elon in a second, but him claiming that shows us that to a degree he does care about his country, right? He does care about his country. And also, he isn't scared of what will happen to him now that he said this, right? Kind of going back to, him being done with the Biden administration and the Democratic Party, right? He knows, right, that they're not going to be happy. They're probably going to try and make him some sort of public enemy number one now, or maybe not number one, but they're up there. He's going to be up there now, right? And he doesn't care. He doesn't care because he probably knows his power. This is what you have to understand. He is a billionaire, right? Not only is he a billionaire, he also, I'm talking like not just billionaire, like hundreds of billions of dollars in his net worth, right? He also owns, right, Instagram and Facebook. Obviously he owns WhatsApp, but Instagram and Facebook are, other than, Elon owning X, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, those are huge. That makes him, as far as I'm concerned, that makes him as powerful as the president. Maybe obviously he's more powerful than the Biden president because he's not even president, but than a actual president who is kind of in charge of an administration, not a puppet president. He basically has the same amount of power, right? He technically can control what can be said on the platforms, right? And everyone uses his platform, so if they do try and shut it down, people aren't going to have that. They're not going to have it because, we love Instagram. Facebook's dying off a little bit, but, people still use it. And this also shows, and this is maybe me being a little bit, not conspiracy, but maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, right? But I think that Zuckerberg releasing this statement, Zuckerberg saying that Trump with his fist in the air is the most badass thing he's ever seen in his life, or one of the. Him being a huge UFC fan, right? Loving UFC, loving Dana. I think that this is a huge sign that he is probably going to vote for Donald Trump. And it wouldn't surprise, I'm not saying he will, I wouldn't put money on it, but I also would say that it wouldn't surprise me if he publicly endorsed Donald Trump too, which would just be huge. That, for me, would be just Trump in office straight away, right? Because he's got Elon. Trump has Elon on his corner now, 100%. But if he can get Zuckerberg publicly in his corner, then he has, what he will then have is, I wouldn't say zero, because you don't know how quick, we can't say for sure whether Zuckerberg will, stick to being, keeping his hands out of the election. You can't say for sure, but I'm just going to go with what he's saying for now, right? Trump can be sure that he has X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, I'll say X, Facebook and Instagram on his side. Not on his side, but in the sense of there's no censorship, it's fair. And that is huge for Donald Trump. That is literally what changes the results of an election. And I mean changes it in a fair way. There's no interference. So listen, that for me is Donald Trump probably president now. Not just based on that. Not obviously if it was based on performance, then obviously he would be president today. But obviously the world doesn't work like that. And what I just want to say is that I personally think that it's actually very good to see two of the most, even though I guess technically there's this beef between them in the fight or whatever, but two of the most known billionaires in the world, right? The two Elon's the rocket billionaire, but now the two social media billionaires, forgetting all the other stuff that Elon does, the fact that they're doing good just shows that the world isn't necessarily going into the decay that everybody thinks it is, and that maybe I said it would be. Right? I made a video at the beginning of the year about 2024 already going crazy. Maybe there's something left. Maybe it could be saved. I mean, August is the 8th month, right? We've got 4 months left. You never know. You never know. Even if Trump doesn't win this election, but you have the fair, I'll call it the battlefield of debating and information being spread around the internet within the 3 primary social media companies. If that's open and fair for free speech, that's a win. That's a very big victory for people who maybe think like me. If you're watching this show, you probably do think like me. So look, that's what you need to know about the video, about the post, right? And yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully he sticks to his word. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Maybe we look like fucking idiots for thinking he would, but I think the future looks bright on this one. Thank you for watching. See you soon.